watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, this is Paul Stefan, and I'm here today with my guest, Martin Grams Jr., and today we're going to be talking about the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention. So welcome, Martin.
Well, welcome. Thank you. Pleasure being on the show.
It's great to have you here. Now, with you, did you start with you to have an interest in these things? Like, did you like old movies, old stars, old TV, things like, are you kind of like a fan of these nostalgia type shows?
Probably like anyone, just an aficionado for the old movies, the old television shows. So.
Did you have favorites when you were growing up? Or?
Yeah, old cartoons and Three Stooges were very popular Saturday mornings, but one leads to another, and you get hooked on the one, and you want to try another one. So.
Mm-hmm. And you like old movies, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. Love watching old movies.
TCM or?
Not as much. They don't play as many older movies as they used to, but I still enjoy some of the rarities. The other week they played old silent British movies that were directed by Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh, wow.
They were restored, so I got to see them, how really gorgeous they looked.
Oh, terrific, because I saw a couple of his that was just on TCM recently, too. But they were like the early sound ones, 1929, 1930. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was very interesting how he actually used sound. I mean, he very creatively used sound in these movies. And so he was already adapting to the medium, but he made it almost like the sound was another character in the movie.
Ironically, he was the guy who once said, Hitchcock himself said, there is no suspense in the anticipation, no suspense in the bang of a gun, only in the anticipation of it. And so he knew how to use sound when he needed to use sound.
Right. Well, that was great. Now, you're run this convention, the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention, and how did that all get started?
Well, the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention began about 12 years ago. Friends of mine and I attend a lot of conventions ourselves as convention goers and as vendors and sometimes assistants and helpers. And after so many years, we kind of realized, we like what this one convention does, we don't like what this convention does, and friend of mine in Michigan kept nudging me a little bit and saying, you ought to do one on your own, you ought to do one of your own. And one or two of them, which I liked, I could see the handwriting on the wall. It's an aging fan base, a declined economy. They were closing down, and they did. And so we decided to get a head start and do one of our own that would fill in the void. And I think of I'd say about 11 or so conventions that we based what we would love to see in a convention that would continue to carry on the tradition. I think about 8 of them have closed up since then. Wow. But it's just demographics. The people who run it say it's just been too long. One of them went 41 years. So I can understand, after 41 years, I'd be worn out too. So thankfully, we've been able to carry on the tradition. And for 3 days, people can come in and watch old movies on the big screen, rare ones too. They can see panels and seminars on stage, old-time radio reenactments on stage, over 100 vendors selling vintage memorabilia like movie posters and magazines and stuff. And then, of course, we have Hollywood celebrities, and they sign autographs, as you know, and pose for photos, and fans love that.
Right, sure. Now, when was the first one? What year was that?
The first one was 12 years ago, so I'd say that was probably 2005, 2006.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't feel like it's been 10 years. It goes by pretty fast.
Has the format of the convention, or have things changed over those years, or no?
Minor tweaks, just for demographics or reasonings we figured out. For example, hot rod movies and beach party flicks, as nice as they are, they're really dated to a niche crowd. Nobody wants to see them in the movie room. They can watch them at home. We've discovered that people like Bond girls. So there's a huge crowd that comes in just to meet anyone who was a Bond girl in a James Bond movie.
Interesting.
So every year we have 2 Bond girls practically like routine, and we even had a James Bond once, George Lazenby one year.
Yeah, oh, wow.
He was between Sean Connery and... I think it was between Sean Connery and Sean Connery, because Connery went on strike or whatever, and he came back. Right. So we've tweaked it minor, but for the most part, the agenda and the mission statement is still the same.
Well, that's good. Now, part of that, you did give a brief, description there, because I'm going to say for somebody who's never been to one of your conventions, you describe a little bit about what goes on there. So, like, you're going to have 100 different vendors, you say?
About 100 different vendors. We have about 200 vendor tables. On average, a vendor will buy 2 tables, so we give it about 100 vendors.
Okay.
They sell old toys, old comic books, DVDs, books, magazines, fanzines, T-shirts, bobbleheads. Some of it's new collectibles, a lot of it's old vintage. Even if you're not there to, like a collectible show or a flea market, to buy, sometimes it's really cool to find out what you used to have as a kid and then discover how much they go for.
Right.
And then if you talk to the vendors, and I've always told people, even if you're not in the market for buying a collectible or going home, you don't mind going home empty-handed. At the very least, you don't go home empty-handed if you talk to the vendors, because they'll explain how a hardcover book, say the Lone Ranger in the 30s and 40s, the books, they're about $5 a pop. But the dust jacket, which are not as easy to find because they got worn in the books you can find, if it has a dust jacket, you're talking $80 to $100. And I've seen people literally at the show, they're negotiating price and they're trying to go $5 or $10, and finally the guy takes the dust jacket off the book. He hands the book back to the vendor and says, I'm negotiating for the dust jacket. I don't care about the book. I got one for myself at home. So it's an interesting fascination to find out why comic books go for pennies and why some comic books go for lots of money. The value of action figures, it's just amazing. And you can also find out about the current trends. What you read online, they say don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Exactly.
But you can talk to a vendor who sells merchandise, and he's not just trying to sell it. He will tell you what's probably going to be the next big franchise. Grab issue 1, or grab this, or here's what you might want to keep an eye out on. So it also helps you as an investment if you're looking to put money into something and then 10 years from now sell it for twice the amount of money you paid for.
So the vendors are actually helpful to the people who come to the convention.
Correct. And they're not just in the market for selling, they're also interested in buying. So I've seen people show up at conventions with a backpack full of old toys or old magazines or comic books. Some bring in boxes. The vendors at our show, we have a policy. If we get more than one complaint from a customer in a year, they don't come back. But we also scout and scrutinize some of the vendors who come to our show. So they're all very reliable. They're very honest. If you bring some old collectible and they tell you, I'll give you $5, it's not worth much, they're being honest about that. Yes, they're going to sell it for 20, but they aren't going to sell it for 100 because it's only worth 20 and they have to make an investment. But they could also be honest and tell you that's worth a lot more money. You may do better selling it on eBay. So a lot of times they're into the market of actually taking a look to see what you have as well. So if you have old collectibles, don't go to a flea market. Go to this convention. These are people who are specializing in their field.
That's terrific. That's one group of people can come just for that. Because, I find it, is it affordable, a lot of the stuff there? Or is there the things that are like there's some high end? Or
It's a both. At our show, it's a mix. Some people, they're just literally cleaning out collections. They'll go places and get them for whatever price. You can go to a table where the guy says everything on the table is $2 a piece. Must go before Saturday and first come in. You'll find some bargains. I've even seen vendors buy from those guys and then put it out on their table and mark the price up. But then there are other vendors who have items for $300, $400, $500. One guy has comic books for $4,000 or $5,000. And if you're in the market for a specific comic, he can go back home and bring one the next day. And then there are other people, if you can't find, you go to Walmart and buy a T-shirt. And it's got a Batman symbol. But if you want 1940s Batman from a Cliffhanger cereal, that's more specific oriented. These are the vendors who can probably get one for you if they don't have one.
Well, that's terrific. I mean, it was sort of like an odd man out. I got one thing last year myself. The guy was selling sheet music, the old sheet music with the covers on them and stuff. He's works at Hopkins. You may know him. And I got one. It was just a picture of this young woman. It was just beautiful in a hat and everything. It's her face, and it's the front of the song. And it had a wooden frame, the original frame, from 1915, and he only charged me $8 for it. And I know I could get a lot more than that, but since I collect graphics, that's more about the graphics for me.
Right.
That it was beautifully lithographed, and so
one of the vendors at our show sells movie posters and lobby cards.
Yeah.
And the big thing he sells every year are the ones with the Hollywood celebrities that weekend, because people buy it, go downstairs and get it signed. Sure. and it's amusing how they'll bring the same one back 2 years later when another cast member from the same movie.
Oh, that's good if you can get a complete set or close to it.
Yeah, and the vendor is also very good because he he will be able to tell you if it's a reissue. Say the movie got re-released 4 times.
Yeah.
If that's a reissue, that's an original. The prices. You can also, unlike what you see on the internet, you're not buying blind. You can examine the product. You can see the quality. That's always the fun stuff. So you can actually gauge, and you can talk the price down, or in some cases they might be able to talk the price up when they start realizing they underpriced it too.
Okay.
But it's worth checking out just for the old collectible aspect.
Now, in that vendor area, I ran into an author that I did an interview with last year. And so you have your authors there as well as you feature some authors, right, each year?
Correct. We always have 3 or 4 or 5 authors on average. They wrote a book. A lot of them do it independently. Today with print on demand, you could sell more books on a print on demand than the New York Times bestseller list on a major publishing distribution. So at this point, it doesn't matter where you get the book or who writes it. You can flip through the book and see if you want to buy it, if it has what you're looking for. The authors can sign it and autograph it personally. So there's a lot of advantages to that. And most of the guest authors will always do a slideshow presentation that year. I remember we had Carol Ford one year do a talk about Bob Crane from Hogan's Heroes.
Yes.
And she dropped a surprise when she did her presentation in a glass case. She had the hat that Bob Crane wore on Hogan's Heroes.
Wow.
She knew the family because she wrote the book and they cooperated. And under a specific agreement that her husband had to keep an eye on that hat. It couldn't go anywhere. She literally had it there on display, so after the presentation, you can go up and have your picture taken with the hat.
Oh.
But as soon as it was over, her husband took that hat back up to the room, and he was there all weekend except for that 1-hour presentation.
Wow.
Because he sat there guarding the hat. Because it was legit.
funny.
She didn't want to lose that. She could hear a lot from the family.
Funny. So this year, who are the authors coming?
I can't remember because we actually have people who actually handle a lot of that now.
Oh, okay.
In other words, the event has grown to a point I have other people handling certain tasks, I designated positions.
So we'll tell people, look online on your website and you'll see who the authors
Correct.
are.
I know Carol Ford is coming back again. Jim Rosen, who wrote a book on Streets of San Francisco and the Invaders, he'll be there. He's an actor himself. He did TV shows like Quincy, wrote a book about it. He also wrote some of the episodes for Quincy.
Really?
Yes, he's an interesting guy to talk to. I know there's a couple authors. One guy wrote a book about Jaws, the making of the movie. He'll do a presentation. Ed Halse, I know, will be there. He just wrote a book about the all-encompassing history of the shadow in cinema. The old Lamont Cranston, who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men.
Actually, Alec Baldwin, wasn't it, in the movie?
Yes, in the 90s, correct. So he did a book, he did a talk, so he'll be doing that too.
So that's good. And then another thing is the panels, right? Tell us about the panels and what you got scheduled this year, and if you don't remember, some from the past.
Well, the panels are always good. We've had ones where people told you how to. They were like, some of them are very academic, and then others are fun. The most popular are the ones where the celebrities are doing Q&As.
Right.
And then we've had presentations where someone this year, for example, is going to do a history of radio suspense, which ran for 20 years. And everyone from Frank Sinatra to Jack Benny played in this horror program that aired every week. So he's going to do a presentation on that. One woman's going to do a talk about Paul Lynde, the character actor.
Of course.
Yeah. We have, I'm going to say, radio reenactments on stage. So that's always cool to see.
And you say get people from the audience actually audition and get parts in the script, right?
Correct. And so the seminars and the events, it's like basically one event after another every hour on the hour. They're diverse enough that basically we tell people, get your money's worth. Don't just go in and get an autograph from a celebrity, have your photo taken, go back home. Go check out a seminar or something. And a lot of people do it more than they used to, and they've discovered that a history on the history of the quiz show, say The Truth or Consequences, is a fun show because it's like, I didn't know that Hot Springs, New Mexico became Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. And they learn out all the details.
Ralph Edwards and then Bob Barker
Correct.
did that show.
Correct.
And I think one of your panels that's interesting to me this year is going to be with child stars. Or former child stars like Paul Peterson and Eileen Quinn and
Lee Aker.
Eileen
Quinn was, of course, Annie in the musical, which everyone, I think even families would love to bring their kids to come meet Annie.
Yeah.
She grew up and actually has an interesting career. Lee Aker was Rusty on Rin Tin Tin. Paul Peterson from
Donna Reed.
Donna Reed Show.
Right.
So it's an eclectic variety, and
Right.
you get to find out what it was like to be a child actor back then, and then how, as you grow up, you get to do a few Disney movies, and next thing you know, you're selling real estate and making a fortune. But it's like, how did that go from acting to selling real estate?
Right.
And they're there to answer the questions.
Or, because I've been doing research already on Eileen, she has, I think it's a rockabilly band. They're called the Leapin' Lizards.
Mm-hmm. And
she's the front singer for that. And I don't know if you've ever done this, because you've had some other celebrities, even though they've been known a little bit for their acting, but they also sing or got a singing career later. It'd be nice if you had like little musical segments or, concerts with some of these stars getting up and singing, like doing a little lounge stuff.
We've talked to a few of them. It depends on the celebrity. Some of them just want to perform and then go home. And we always tell them, well, you got to at least sign some autographs for the fans. That's what they're there for. But I mean, we've had everyone from James Darren to Davy Jones. This year, Shirley Jones, who's been there before, but she's signing autographs. So people like Carousel or Oklahoma, here's your the Music Man. Here's your chance to go ahead and get an autograph and ask the questions.
Right. And of course, Jerry Rochelle's a singer.
Correct. And I think we had Julie Newmar, who was Stupefying Jones in
Little
Abner
musical. Yes. She was in Seven Brides and Seven Brothers, too.
That's right.
She was a dancer in that movie.
It was amusing. I have a niece. She took a look at the picture, and it was a picture of Julie Newmar as Catwoman, and she goes, "Oh, no, that's so-and-so." And I was like, "What?" She goes, "Seven Brides for Seven Brothers." She recognized who she was. And I'm thinking, that's amusing that an 8-year-old niece knows who she is.
Swift. I mean, but actually then, because I know my nostalgia is, her name was Julie Newmar. And it was she did a show I remember as a kid. It was with Bob Cummings. It was called The Living Doll.
Yes.
And she played the living doll, the robot woman.
And it's funny, we actually had a guy who was involved with the TV show at our convention, and he did a talk about it. And I did not know that while the show only ran 1 year, most of the episodes do not exist.
Wow.
There's been speculation as to what happened, and he's going through a lot of records, but it turns out only 11 episodes exist.
So there are some.
Yeah, they put them out on a DVD set, and on screen it says, if you have any episodes not on the set, please contact. And I thought, that's kind of odd, because wouldn't the studio own them all? And somewhere along the line, different parties thought the others had a complete set of prints, so they destroyed theirs, and now they're busy looking for them. But that's a show that was in the 60s, and there's lost episodes.
Right. Now, please, I think it would be a mistake if we didn't bring this up. Mention your charity auction.
Oh, yes, we have a charity auction. It helps children with treatable cancer. It helps benefit the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So what we do is we have 2 tables out for Thursday and Friday. People bring anything they're cleaning their house with, whatever they want to part with, old magazines, DVDs, videos, T-shirts, collectibles. The tables get filled pretty quick. People bring a lot of good stuff. And it's just they're all weekend. People can, like a vendor table, you can go over and take a look at them, see what you want. We have Post-it notes that are sometimes on the items to designate what they are, if there's something special, like book is autographed inside by the author, etc. And then on Friday afternoon, we auction all the items off, and they go for whatever price it's willing to go for. But the money all goes to the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So it's a good cause, and people there, they can write a check out to the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. They can give it to us, and we mail it to them, and they get a receipt from St. Jude's in the mail. So it's a tax deductible. It's like a thank you letter.
Right.
Some people get up on their smartphones of recent. They'll go to St. Jude's website, make the donation, show us on their smartphone, and we go, yeah, fair enough, go ahead, take the items. Others pay cash, credit card, whatever. But we always believe that a convention shouldn't just be for just nostalgia and the fans. Something good should have to come from it.
Well, that's good.
And so I know how much we've given to the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital over the years as a result. Thankfully, they've been very appreciative over that, and I'm sure they are. Somewhere along the line, I would like to think that we've helped raise enough money to cure 3 or 4 kids, at least at this point. Because we only have 1 hour for 1 day a year.
Well, how much have you raised? Do you know the figure?
Right now, it's been over $12,000.
Oh, that's terrific.
Which is not bad when you think of 1 hour to
Yes.
sell items. I think the best item we had, we send letters to fans, celebrities, I just did last week, asking if they could donate anything autographed, even if it's autographed photos. And sometimes they'll send you 10 or 11, so we've got one every year for a number of years. And we wrote one to Elizabeth Taylor. Well, the day after the convention's over, we get in the mailbox, there's an autographed photo from her.
Wow.
And I said, well, missed by a day, but no big deal. We got next year. And she passed away between the years. So we were like, normally we don't include the envelope, but what are they going to do, write to her? So we were like, okay, let's get a frame. Let's get it framed. We put it in a frame, and we said it comes with the envelope.
Wow.
And I think that was the highest bids we've ever had on any item.
I imagine.
I think it was about $321.
Wow.
And the auctioneer was funny. When it got down to the two people and the bidding started slowing, I remember he remarked, and I will never forget this, he said, remember, the more you pay for it, the more you come to appreciate it.
Good line. Good line. Now, for me to segue into the celebrities, I say, with all the stuff that you've done for St. Jude's, you do think that at the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention, you'd get Marlo Thomas.
Yes, well, we've talked to her a few times. She's a spokesperson. She doesn't really run it.
I know, she's a spokesperson for
Yes,
St.
and she's a very nice lady. And we've been trying. It's a matter of scheduling and trying to figure out what we can do to make things transportation. So there's a lot behind the scenes, but she is on the agenda of we're working on it.
Okay.
And I remember last year when we had Bernie Capel from the Love Boat.
Oh, yeah.
He worked with her on That Girl.
Yes,
and
he did.
He made a comment. He says, she hasn't shown up yet? And I says, we're working on it. And he goes, I'm going to pick up the phone and call her. I was like, go ahead.
That'll help.
Yeah, please do. But she and I have talked a few times.
Now, with the celebrities, and you talked to me about this on the phone, but I want to have it recorded here. What is the process for finding your celebrities, and who you're going to have any given year? I mean, what's the criteria?
The criteria is based on demographics and numbers. It's kind of like a science. Some celebrities will draw in more people than others, mainly because they just happen to do that one movie or one TV show. We know a lot of people would like to meet them, but we're also inclined to bring in the little people as well if they can add a variety. One year we had Franz Stryker Jr. His dad created the Lone Ranger and the Green Hornet.
Oh, there you go.
So he did a talk about that. People loved it. And one year we had Virginia Davis, who, before Mickey Mouse, Walt Disney had these silent live cartoons called Alice in Cartoonland, but Alice was always live action, superimposed on
the little girl,
cartoon. Yes. And she was
blonde too. Yeah.
technically a Disney legend.
Oh, okay.
So we had her there, and it was funny. For the first day, only diehard animation buffs came to get her autograph. But sometime around 3, 4 in the afternoon, we screened an original 40-minute documentary about before Mickey Mouse. There was Alice, and then she did a Q&A on stage for 30, 40 minutes, and afterwards that line never stopped. She was funny because people all of a sudden realized this is Disney legend.
There you go.
And oddly, about 4 or 5 years ago, she passed away. And then about a year later, my wife and I were down in Disney World, and they have one of those gift shops in Disney California studios, Hollywood studios, I think they call it. There's a gift shop. They had a picture of her autographed and framed in a plaque, and it was $250.
Wow.
And I'm sitting back thinking to myself, I know this is Disney World, but at our show, she was signing for $10 a pop, just to cover some expenses of putting the dog in the kennel and paying for parking at the airport.
Sure.
But the celebrities, to your question, it varies. Next year will be the 50th anniversary of Night of the Living Dead.
Right.
It's a classic black and white horror film. 5 of the main characters and actors are still around, so they agreed to come attend the show to have a cast reunion. So for a 50th anniversary, it seems natural rather than 51 or 49.
Right, exactly.
So it just basically depends on who's available on those weekends. I could name drop names, but it's disappointing to know they couldn't make it. but it's like wrong weekend, let's try next year and so on. Some of them, they're still busy.
Yeah.
Some are still acting. Some do voiceovers for commercials. I remember we had one say yes, and 2 days later she called and says, I can't make it. I just realized I'm going to be on a safari that weekend. And I'm thinking, when I get to 85 years old, I hope I'm still on a safari too.
Now, some of you can talk about this on camera. Can anybody, there's a ranking process of most wanted, less wanted, whatever. 1, 2, 3, I think you said it was.
Yeah, sometimes we use Facebook for demographics, number polling, and also finding out what the attendants would like to see. In other words, we could put up a teaser like Marianne versus Ginger. And if all of a sudden 99% of the comments below are Marianne, if you have a choice,
Mary
Dawn
Ann.
Wells, yeah,
Yes,
Mary
of
Ann,
course.
because it's what the attendees want to see.
Right.
Sometimes we can find out by likes, as an example. So if Barbara Eden has 350,000 likes, and some actress who did a TV show in the 70s only has 2,000 likes, it's a give or take. Who do we get? Can we get both? Yes, but if Barbara Eden's going to draw in more people through the door, which offsets the expenses,
Right, exactly.
And it sounds cruel to say, it's also a business. It's debits versus credits.
Exactly.
So we have to make sure we don't go over budget. We have to make sure that the celebs will draw in enough people to cover the cost. We had Robert Fuller from Laramie last
Right,
year, and
exactly.
Emergency, and he had a fan club, and one of the members of the fan club says, if he's at your show, I guarantee at least 200 members are going to show up at the door.
Wow.
And I thought, well, in that case, Robert Fuller wants a more expensive airfare, but that's justified. And we figured we won't take a loss. We're okay from day one.
Because his line never stopped, from what I could see.
Correct. And Robert Conrad was, okay, he did enough shows, Baba, Black Sheep, Wild Wild West, but he had also never done an East Coast convention in 20 years.
Wow.
And we realized if we don't get him, we won't. So we
Right.
took him for that reason. Sometimes we got a Hollywood legend like Celeste Holm or Marcia Hunt or Margaret O'Brien, and it was mainly because they're
Ann
not-
Rutherford.
or Ann Rutherford. They're not going to be around for another, 10, 15 years, whereas
Right.
a celebrity from the 50s, 60s may.
That's
so
true.
that's another thing we weigh the options. And also, regardless of their age, we look at their health condition. It sounds cruel, but are they presently going through a health condition where if we don't get them now, they may not be able to be because they don't want to be in a wheelchair at a convention. So
Sure.
it all weighs in various factors. So we try our best to get whatever celebrities are available and whatever would work. And a couple of times I actually would tell a celebrity people's jaws would hit the floor. I say, how about we try for next year? Because I think since we've already begun promoting this year, it'd be better that people know you're coming for next year because you would be a headline.
Yeah.
So, and most celebrities are understanding. They're like, yeah, it's more advantageous to me. Yes.
A build-up.
Yes.
For them.
Yes.
I mean, you said to me before we got on camera, and you can say it here, about the fans who come to your convention every year can fill out something who they'd like to see.
Correct.
And you say that those people, that carries weight.
Yes. They don't get carried away. We look over.
No, I said it carries weight.
Oh, it carries weight. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes, that's okay. It does, because I get emails through Facebook and just through the website all the time. Hey, can you bring so and so there? I'd love to meet them, and that we read them, of course, and we respond too. And sometimes not immediately, depending on smartphones these days. But when we have a suggestion box at the show, as you know, and as people fill them out, we figured they are already at the show versus somebody who's emailing and we're not certain if they do already come, or are they just saying, we're only going to come that 1 year, you get that 1 star.
Yeah.
We like the people who keep coming year after year. So whatever they put in the suggestion box carries more weight, because we figure these are people who are continuing coming. We appreciate that. We really do read every single one, even if it's not just a celebrity. 1 year we had to move the movie room to a different spot, and it was a great location, except we never realized until someone wrote it on a piece of paper that the side doors of the movie room slammed when people entered and closed, and it was annoying their listening. So the next year, we couldn't lock the doors because of the fire regulations, so we put signs outside that says, please use other door. And on the inside, we actually had a sign that says, if exiting, please close door gently. Never had a problem after that. But we read every suggestion, because the rule of thumb is you can always keep tweaking to make it a better experience.
Now, you talked about other people, and you talked about some of the old radio stuff and the writers. Have you ever thought of, or have you had people who were actually film or television directors, or names that people would know? Or
yes, we've tried. As my wife says, it's just a postage stamp. So we send out probably about 100 letters every spring or late winter, just to see on a lark if we get 2 or 3 responses. Usually we get a dozen. Most of them are, sorry, not available that weekend, thanks for thinking of me. But usually get 1 or 2 who call up, they ask a question or 2, and they say, okay, I'll do it. I haven't really hung out with fans and answered their questions and signed autographs for a while. So it's funny, we talk to some people and they say, did you see who they had at such and such convention? You should get them. And I get it, but they're looking at who's already been to shows. We always say, just name names. And you get that one person who starts naming these actors and actresses or directors or screenwriters, and all of a sudden he will say like Richard Donner. And all of a sudden we go, yeah, no one's ever thought about that, because they come up with the names that they're just coming up with names.
Just coming up, yeah.
And sometimes we're surprised. And so we've had people who were singers, a couple writers, never had any directors. And I guess either they're still busy working or they don't need to.
Yeah.
I mean, would we love to have Clint Eastwood or Ron Howard? Yes.
Of course.
For what they've accomplished over the years, it's acknowledgement. And
but they're still working.
yes, and that's the one downside, is as they're still working. But I don't believe that. Sometimes they always say it's not my thing, and one or two have told us it's beneath me to sit there and sign autographs and charge a fee. But we tell them you don't have to charge a fee.
Yeah.
But fans have questions, and I remember Roy Thinnis, who did The Invaders.
Right.
One year, for his first show was our convention, and he did only 3 or 4 after that. Nice guy. He's one of my favorites. And he was amazed on the first time he ever did a convention. He thought all they're going to do is get a photo, sign it, and thank you very much. And they started asking questions to things he forgot he even did. And one guy came up to him and said, you in 1968 did a speech at a UFO conference. And he sat there and leaned back and went, I never did a UFO conference. They go, yeah, you did. In fact, I recorded the audio. I gave you a transcript here. I typed it all up a week ago. And Thinnis was polite. Well, thank you very much. I'll take a look at it. And he signed the autograph. And the next day, Thinnis tells me, he goes, he couldn't sleep for a little bit before going. And so he grabbed the thing. He started reading it. And he gets about 2 paragraphs in and goes, I did do this. And he's like completely amazed at, wow. And so he was hoping to see the guy the next day to tell him, you were right. And that was good. Thank you. So a lot of the stars are always appreciative. And the big joke with a lot of them is they know more about us than we know about ourselves.
Now, I was going to ask you, brought the idea of about another convention up. I noticed, I was going to ask you about where the other nostalgia conventions are, but I ran across, there's one in April in Philadelphia. And Philadelphia, this year had like a 1980s type theme.
Yes.
And they had Gary Busey there. They had Tia Carrera there. Are you saying because these people were at these conventions, you wouldn't have them at your convention? No,
we would have them. It's the demographics is whether there's a theme, or there's an anniversary, whether people are asking to see them. There is a lot of things that go into play to decide who to pick and who to have at the show. In some cases, it doesn't matter if they're a huge famous name. If that celebrity has done so many conventions, the joke is name a convention you haven't seen them at. We refer to that as oversaturation. Why bring them there when we'd rather bring someone that you can't see some at other occasions? So, we had Tony Dow from Leave It to Beaver, and people love to line up and get pictures of Wally and the Beaver. And now we're getting hit with tons of bring Jerry Mathers, Jerry Mathers. There you go. And we've had a lot of requests. So for him, we're working on getting Jerry Mathers.
Working on getting him.
Because that's what the fans want to see.
That's great.
But in technical, as an example, we haven't had anybody come up to us and ask to get Gary Busey yet.
Okay.
So we got a zillion people asking for Jerry Mathers.
There you go.
See what we can do about getting the beef.
Right. Well, talking about that, because is the demographics. You've talked about that before. Because a lot of these shows, the people you have are 50s and 60s types. And talked about this on the phone. You don't have too many from the 70s and 80s. Is your audience drive that they're not? Plus the fact that some of these people are still working?
No, actually, it's funny. The actors from the 70s, 80s will draw in more people through the door. It's more mainstream. But the older stars, the decision early on was they're not going to be around as long as the ones. So if, in other words, those who were doing 30s, 40s, 50s TV shows and movies, those stars are probably at an age level where we want to grab them while we can.
Right.
We can always grab the stars who are in the 70s 5-10 years from now.
Right.
But we do mix it a little. We put a couple, like this year we have Patrick Duffy and Morgan Fairchild.
Of course, yeah.
So there's your 80s. Yeah. And then if you want to go in the 60s and maybe a little 70s, we have Shirley Jones from Partridge Family to a lot of musicals. So we kind of have a diversity from 30s all the way up. We've had Margaret O'Brien, a lot of the legends.
Oh, I can see where you do have themes because I remember when you had the $6 Million Man people there together, and the Bionic Woman, they were all there together. Richard Anderson and Lee Majors and and Lindsay, were all there.
And that was a big surprise. I did not realize until one of the agents representing one of the stars told me. He said, Do you realize this is the third time all three have been together at the same fan gathering since the show went off in 1978?
Only 3 times.
Only 3 times. Usually it's 2 or 1, but never all 3.
Yeah, but you got all 3.
And it was just everything fell into place. It wasn't like we were trying to convince all 3 to be. It just it worked out. We invited each one. They all said, "Hey, that'd be great," and they came together. So fans of the show got their opportunity to get a cast photo signed by all 3, or have their photo taken with all 3, bring merchandise. And it was great to see all 3 on stage for an hour talking about the shows, telling stories of explosives that went off too soon and dirt flying in their face. And it was a great hour.
Well, there you go. Because I know this year you mentioned the 80s again. You mentioned those first 2, Morgan Fairchild, and so, but also Belinda Montgomery.
Yes.
Is this year too.
Yes, I am a big fan of Man from Atlantis, and that might be the first time in 12 years that I actually selected a celebrity for my own choice.
To see Patrick Duffy or to see her?
Both of them. I loved Man from Atlantis. She was the co-star with Patrick Duffy. Once Patrick Duffy fell into place, and I knew Belinda, we could easily just pick up the phone or send an email and we've got her. And she was very thrilled. And normally we pick the stars that were based on what the attendants would like to see. And in this case, I thought, well, for those who don't remember Man from Atlantis, we'll screen one of the movies. We'll have them. We'll write up in the program guide to remind them what the show was, and both of them will be there. So if it's one of those shows they remember it, but they haven't seen it in 40 years, it'll be like a flashback to their teenage years, and go, "Wow, this is Aquaman on TV." And then other occasions, it's good because then if they want to later get into the franchise, and it was a very short-run show, here's a chance to actually talk to the stars themselves. But for me, that was the first time in 12 years I chose
somebody for you.
It was more for I want to have them 2 together. I don't want to just have one.
Yeah, but Belinda too for Doogie Howser.
Correct. And again, there's your 80s crossover.
There you go.
She was also in a small role in the latest Tron movie a few years ago,
really?
the sequel. So she's done enough that there should be a crossover to attract an even younger audience.
Yeah, I have to do a research because I remember her growing up, watching her doing a lot of stuff. Not just those shows you mentioned, but other things, whether they were TV movies or other guest spots or whether, because I was a young guy then, real young, and so I thought, boy, she's really cute, and the dimples and the whole thing, and I said, boy, this is the real girl next door, pretty lady,
Yeah.
And so it's good that you'll have her there.
Well, I suspect most of the attendees, they look on the website, they scroll down to the homepage, they see the celebrities. There's a celebrity page that gives brief bios about them too. But so and we try to slip one thing in each quick brief bio about something they didn't know the star had done, and go, "Oh, Patrick Duffy writes novels. Believe it or not, Man from Atlantis novels."
Oh, he
does.
does.
Guess which show he's very proud of. Most people didn't know that.
They would think Dallas is what he'd be proud of.
You would think.
Bobby Ewing.
But you could tell which one he really liked. But we do that. But I have no doubt most people go to IMDb, scroll down, and see what all they've done. And go, wow. I mean, the joke is everyone did Bonanza and Gunsmoke back then. Right. Even Jodie Foster. I mean, name an actor or actress, they did it.
Jerry Rochelle.
Correct. And it's amazing the list, but we couldn't list all of the accomplishments. I mean, Martin Landau was scheduled this year. And
he goes way back.
And his untimely
50s.
passing, that was sad. He was a nice guy. But you look over, he worked with Hitchcock. He did Twilight Zone. He did everything and anything. There were zillions of people who had questions. They were like, "Oh, I was hoping to ask him about that one Outer Limits episode."
Oh, see.
So it was
just unfortunate. And this has
Correct.
happened before, either just before or sometimes just after. Because I think after, I don't know, it was within the year after she was there or not, but Patty Duke died not long after she was at your convention.
Correct. She was a sweetheart. She was there for 1 year, and then I think about a year and a half later.
It wasn't too much later.
Davy Jones passed away a few months after, and that was a surprise to me. He was nice, not charging for autographs, answering questions. One girl turned 16 years old. It was her birthday. Her parents brought her there as a surprise because she was a big fan of the Monkees. So she had no idea till it was the last minute. And he knew about it. Apparently someone leaked it to him. So he told her, "I'm performing tomorrow night. I'm going to dedicate a song to you." All these little heartwarming stories. But the stars are there for the fans. The fans are there for the stars. And everyone, if you've had a question you've always wanted to know the answer to, there's your, there's your chance to ask them. And I don't think there's really any questions I can think of that you could ask a celebrity that they wouldn't be shy of answering. unless the question is, why on earth did you do that one TV show? But in most cases, the stars are very open to talking
I'm
about
sure they
their
could
past.
laugh and say, well, my agent got it for me.
Correct.
Or some people, I say they did the movie or the TV show for a paycheck,
Yep.
But
There was a story Bill Mooney tells about Hitchcock, and he did an episode called Bang, You're Dead, where he puts a gun and he, one by one through the episode, keeps putting bullets in, not realizing it's not a toy gun. And the whole suspense is trying to catch up to him wherever he's wandering around town and he couldn't stop moving on camera. And child actors only have 4 hours a day to film. There's the requirements back then. And Bill Mooney told this great story where at one point, Alfred Hitchcock got out of the chair, walked over to Bill Mooney, leaned down so only Mooney could hear, and he said, I am going to take a hammer and nails if you don't stand still, and I'm going to hammer your feet to the ground and your blood will come out gushing like milk. So stand still. And paranoid, he stood still for that shot. And he says the punchline is on the way home, he's riding in the car, he tells his mother, and she laughs it off and goes, oh, he's British, they're always like that. To this day, he's got a great story about what it's like to work with Alfred Hitchcock.
And he was at your convention?
He will be probably in another year or two.
So he hasn't been yet.
We've had, all the stars have great stories, but he's probably the only one from Lost in Space I could think of that every 2 years we seem to get another celebrity. We had Angela Cartwright, who also did Sound of Music. So it was amusing because sometimes my volunteer staff has to sit with them for security just to make sure everything's good. And usually I will turn over. I'm not concerned about the prices, like how much they make, but I'll ask, hey, Mark, out of curiosity, which did she sell more, Angela sell more or sign more of? Sound of Music or Lost in Space? I'm just curious because if Sound of Music was like 10 times more, we would start weighing the options. Well, there was other kids who were the Von Trapp kids, and Julie Andrews is still around.
The oldest daughter, last name's Carr or something, but I think she'd probably be available.
Yeah.
I am going on 16. That's something.
Right. So again, we're pulling numbers just out of curiosity during the show.
But was it mostly Lost in Space?
Actually, it was half and half.
Oh, it was. She was split down the middle.
But there's so many Lost in Space fans that I think we've had Mark Goddard there. We've had Marta Kristen there.
Okay.
It's just every 2 or 3 years we bring in another one. We could have a cast reunion, but then you draw in all the stars who come only because of Lost in Space, and they won't come any other year.
Right. Well, and when you mention Mathers, he was in one of my favorite Hitchcock movies, The Trouble with Harry. He was the little boy.
Yes.
In that movie.
It was the comedy that Hitchcock did, black comedy.
Right, black comedy.
Yeah.
Right. That was good. But I think that's the best reason for people to come. I guess it varies how much they charge. Is it up to them what they charge for let's say a picture or an autograph? Or
It is. That's the business behind it. Some celebs do not charge. Some do it just for their charity because if they don't, they hear flack from others saying, well, we're charging, you should. So I'll donate to a charity. And then quietly, a lot of times, they're not charging for the second photo or whatever,
Yeah, okay.
Like Davy Jones, he wasn't charging. But if you're getting any of the CDs off the table, he's got his manager there, and his manager's selling the CDs for like $10 a pop.
Right.
But Davy Jones signing for nothing. Bring your camera, he'll pose photos for you.
There you go.
Put it on Facebook.
Some of them come, I guess, with photographs, of themselves. Or I saw
Yeah,
like a picture from last year with Brett Eklund had all these photographs spread out in front of her.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Bond girls, you always see a picture that classic pose where they're standing there with the gun. Somehow all the Bond girls have to pose with a gun somewhere during the filming, except for publicity shots, and they use those.
Yeah, I know a couple of years ago you had Carolyn Monroe. But she was more than that. She was I think almost like she was in Hammer movies, wasn't she? Like in some of the Hammer horror films.
She's
too?
known for those, Golden Voyage of Sinbad, and a bunch of other films. And people, the more they do, the wider variety. More people are coming to see them because if they're famous for one thing, it has to be that really big one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we have Aileen Quinn coming, who was Annie.
Annie, right.
And I figured almost everybody has seen the musical Annie.
Right.
So everyone has seen the little girl, and
Right.
and if their kids have been raised up with that, who wouldn't want to bring your DVD and have her autograph it, have photos taken with it? In some cases, like my nieces and nephews a few years ago, they were too young to understand that television and movies were fake. So what it was a great opportunity for them to meet the stars, see the photos on the table, put one and one together and say, okay. And they realized, yes, it's all pretend.
Okay.
But for kids also, it's just, if that was your childhood movie when you were a kid, the stars come. We do have the one policy, and most conventions don't. We try
What's
to...
that?
we try to make sure that we have different celebrities every year. We rarely bring the same celebrity back twice, unless all of a sudden, like 5 years later, there's an anniversary and there's a couple other members from the cast, and we realize we should have them all together.
Yeah, but in this case, isn't this at least the third time Jerry Rochelle will be there?
It is, but she's a local, so she comes down. It's
From Jersey.
Correct, from Jersey. So she comes down and just signs autographs, and a lot of her fans love meeting her year after year and hanging out with her. So it's kind of like a little reunion, buddy reunion.
Right. Okay. And then of
Yes.
course it's at least the second time for Larry Storch, right?
Third.
A third time for Larry Storch.
Yes.
Okay.
This is his last year of doing autographs.
Well, he's 93.
Yes, he's 90. I was going to say he's 93. It's his last year. We realized if we don't, years from now, we'll be wishing that we had gotten him the third year. And he's also from New Jersey, so his friend drives him down, and Larry just signed. People love signing him. It was funny one day, there was a fan who came by. Larry Storch wears the F Troop hat.
Yeah, I
don't
saw
know
that in the video clip.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the real deal or if it's a replica. I think it's a replica.
It's not the original.
He'll be honest. He'll tell us. But some fan stood there and says, "Please hit me with the hat." So he took the hat, went okay, and started beating the guy in the head and put it back on. The fan goes, "I can die now."
Well, there you go. But seeing that video clip on your Facebook page really made me say, yeah, it's good that you're catching him, because there's a little old man's voice comes out even when he talks. I mean, he's like, he sounds kind of shaky, but
Yeah, well, for me, Larry, when I first met Larry Storch, I never grew up watching F Troop. I didn't watch. I wasn't up that late when I was a kid watching the reruns. I was familiar with Tennessee Tuxedo, and supposedly he voiced the Joker in those 1968, 67 Batman cartoons.
Oh, okay.
But all the reference guides always had question mark. No one could verify it. So I figured, who better to ask than Larry Storch?
Ask him, yeah.
And I asked him, and he said, "Oh yes, I was." And all of a sudden, without even realizing it, he leans over to the other end of the table, and he shows he's got a stack of photos of the Joker from the 60s Batman cartoons. And I went, "Yes, he was."
There you go.
So surprise, surprise, but he answered the question.
There you go. That's good to know. And so also, I guess we didn't talk about as far as your convention, because I want to give everybody the idea that it's comprehensive. It's not just show up and see your favorite celebrity, get a photograph, and go home.
Correct.
The movies, and you show rare movies and rare TV shows. Like I know this year, I'm excited about Orson Welles' first movie.
Correct. Yes, Too Much Johnson. It was a tribute to the Keystone Cops. It's 66 minutes. I've already seen it. It looks like it was meant to be a 30-minute film, and so there's 3 or 4 takes from different angles on the same scene. So some of the scenes are cute, but it seems like they go 4 minutes too long. But that's the way I gathered from watching it. But every film historian is going to catch something that everyone else didn't. So in the case of that, where he did it 2 years in New York, and that was 2 years before he went to Hollywood and made Citizen Kane. Right. So while everyone says Citizen Kane was his first movie, it really wasn't. And that's a novelty. And I know a lot of film buffs are going to watch it. And based on scheduling, because we try to put the diehard films breaks in between, so if you're coming to see one subject, you can keep jumping around, see different stuff. I know a lot of them are going to go off to lunch right after that, and they're all going to be talking about the film and pointing out things they didn't notice. The camaraderie between the film buffs who really like to watch old movies, but obscurities is always the amusement. One of them we're showing this year is Abbott Costello Meet the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Most people have seen all the monster movies where Abbott Costello Meet the Mummy and Frankenstein.
But I've never seen that one, probably.
It turns out it was an hour-long TV special. And it was promoting Abbott Costello Meet Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And as I watched it already, in the background you can see props from the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde in the background. And I'm sitting there looking at it going, they're not heavily promoting the movie, but you can see the Dr. Jekyll figurine, and it's perfect. It's definitely a prop from the movie in the background. But in the TV special, the creature from the Black Lagoon comes in. And so people said they never met the creature from the Black Lagoon in the movies, and that was the only Universal monster that was never in an Abbott Costello movie. They did on TV, so we're going to screen the full hour-long special from
did
the
you
50s.
know whether the person who played the creature in their promotional film was actually James Arness?
No, I don't know if that's ever been fully answered yet.
Okay.
I've read books on it, but no one's been able to answer correctly. We are hoping, fingers crossed, that we can actually have Rico Browning next year. He was the creature from the Black Lagoon, which would give us an excuse, since we have 3 evenings of movies, and it's because 3 days long. We can play each of the 3 creature from the Black Lagoon movies one night a week, so one night each of the weekends, so they can see the first movie on the first night, etc., and progress through so they can see the entire trilogy.
Because I thought Arness was the first one, wasn't he?
No.
He played one, didn't he? I thought he did.
Not that I know of. Ben Johnson was...
maybe I got it wrong.
Ben Chapman was the first.
Oh, okay. I got it
And then
wrong
the second and third was Rico Browning.
Oh, okay. I got that
But
wrong.
he could have done promotional, as you mentioned, and that
Yeah.
I don't know, but he could have.
I'll have to check my resources on that one, too. But also the thing I like, because I'm a big fan of Groucho Marx, you're having the pilot for You Bet Your Life.
Correct. It started out as a radio program.
Right.
And what they did for budgetary purposes is they stuck cameras in there, and a half-hour show takes about an hour to record. So literally with Script Girl walking in front of the camera, Groucho pulling out his notes and taking that moment, says, ready for the next contestant? All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. You basically are seeing an entire radio broadcast of an entire hour, which would be cut down audio-wise to a half hour, recorded in 1949, and the producer sent that to the executives NBC and said, okay, imagine the Script Girl isn't there, imagine we trim this down to a half hour, but that's what the TV version would look like, because instead of the audience seeing the duck, which was a ridiculous looking duck, we have to admit, but it was funny, but they said, we're not even going to change the duck, that's what the audience has been seeing for the radio show, we're going to use it for TV. So it was the pilot for what the TV show did become.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually more of a novelty, not just to see an unaired pilot,
Right.
but to also see a radio broadcast completely filmed from beginning to end.
Right. Now, the question would be, like, for these rarities, where do you find them?
Collectors, film collectors who collect 16 millimeters. Some of them have been in the hobby for many years.
Okay.
So we just always turn to them and say, got anything unusual, odd, something really bizarre or different that people might want to see? Mm-hmm. It's tricky because it's a balance of, we have to have obscure films that you have to be a diehard film buff to want to see.
Right.
Like you really got to know your silent screen actors to really want to see this one movie.
Yeah.
But then we have to have something mainstream like Abbott and Costello,
Right.
where the attendance, as you said, it's a convention, not as much an autograph venue.
Right.
You want to spend the day and you want to see one or two things. You got an hour or two to kill. There's something to watch. The trick part is also finding shorter films. We can't play a 4-hour movie. No one's going to sit in the movie room for 4 hours watching a film.
You're not going to play Intolerance or something, no.
No. Greed and
or Greed,
any of those 4-hour films, Lawrence Arabia. Besides, you can see them on DVD. So
Right.
our intention is we always try to pull out the films that if they're an hour to less than an hour and a half. I think one this year we're doing is Here Come the Nelsons, which was a 1952 big screen movie for Ozzie and Harriet.
Oh, wow.
And we make note in the program guide, and I think on the website, take note, it's actually 3 half-hour TV episodes. It's not one long movie. Somewhere every 25 minutes, it kind of veers another way. So for 75 minutes, but they never did the TV show yet. Ozzie Nelson told ABC, we'll make a movie, but we'll make 3 episodes, and there's 3 pilots. Let us know if you like these ideas as a TV show. And it sold the executives, and they said, done. And then he got them he managed to secure a landmark historic contract, 10 years with ABC to do a show. I think it ran a couple more years after that. But
Right.
who signs a contract for 10 years guaranteed for a TV sitcom? That was
Exactly.
unheard of, but the strength of the movie. So if people want to see Ricky Nelson and David Nelson,
Sure.
little boys before they were even TV, because most of the ones on DVD now are from the 60s when Ricky Nelson was more pop
Yes, of
star.
course, when he was a
So
star,
here
yeah.
you can see him as a little boy. And so there's these novelties that people want to look back and see.
Right. Now, did you have any silent films this year or no?
Yes, we do. We have 3 of them. Actually, Too Much Johnson is a silent film.
Oh, it is?
It was a budget. It was a tribute to the Keystone Cops. So Orson Welles has cute little zinging music in the background, but there is no dialogue.
And they didn't have any of the original Keystone Cops in the movie?
I didn't notice, but it's
Okay.
also done in New York City. I did recognize John Houseman and Joseph Cotton in the cast.
Oh, well, Cotton was in a lot of his movies.
Yes, so this is also Cotton's first film, and John Houseman was a producer. So for
right,
Mercury
exactly.
Theater.
Yeah,
So-
sure, of course.
So a lot of film buffs are going to really start pointing out and noticing some intricate things. One thing I like about the show too, the fans
Get in
talk,
there.
and they've been around for so many shows that people who have passed on, they'll sit back and say, "Oh no, that's not true. I talked to so and so when he was at such and such convention, and he told me." And then they'll give the story, tell the quick brief story, and you realize, okay, so the books are wrong. And so you never know what the stars are going to tell you today, that 5, 10, 15 years from now, you're going to read it in a book or a magazine article and go, no, they're wrong. And you're inclined to write that letter to the editor and give them a correction.
Well, the thing that I find disappointing is that your location, I don't know if that, I think of that as maybe being a kind of a little bit against you, because a lot of people think it's in Timonium, it's so far, I won't go. And I don't know if that has a problem for you with attendance, because I feel like saying, if this was like in downtown Baltimore, you'd have hordes of people.
We've weighed the options, and I'll tell you what it is. We could do it, hold the event in the city of Baltimore, but then you have to pay for parking.
Oh, yeah.
The cost of the hotel is much more.
Yeah.
As a result, we'd have to charge more for vendor tables, and as a result, the vendors are going to up their prices on their merchandise because, you know, if you pay $100 for a booth space for a weekend versus $200, sometimes the prices go up. I've been to a Comic Con that was held at a convention center, and it was $1,400 for a booth space, and the space is no wider than where you're sitting to I'm sitting.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the guy who normally sells T-shirts for $20 was selling them $35 a piece, 2 for $60. And I asked him, "You weren't that price last weekend?" He says the booth space wasn't as expensive.
Yeah.
So
I would say pay a little more gas and come up to Hunt Valley.
And it's actually, the light rail goes right across the street from the hotel. Anyone in Baltimore, it's very easy to get to. Like I said, by light rail as well. Use Uber, cab. Parking is free. The price is very economical. We priced the admission based on what it costs to go to other shows.
Yeah.
So you could go to the same hotel 2 weeks later and see a monster sci-fi convention, but pay $30 admission at the door. We charge $20. And their program guide's a piece of paper folded in half. Ours is a program guide, 50-some pages. This year we're going full color. So there's a give and take, and we actually believe we're giving people a bigger bargain for their money.
Well, that's what I wanted to get into to get to the close, is at first I hope, that you'd be more publicized so that people would know about this, because I was saying in the Baltimore area, to say, look, you mean Shirley Jones is coming to Baltimore? All these other people, they're coming to Baltimore. And people say, this isn't New York, this isn't L.A., this isn't Chicago,
Correct.
And yet you have this, and it's not all that well known. So part of what we want to do is help promote that. And so you say it's $20 admission. So give people also the dates and the times.
For this year's convention, it's September 14, 15, and 16. It's basically 9 to 5 during the day, and seminars and movie screenings go throughout the night too, as well.
Yeah.
So it's basically almost 24/7, especially the movie room.
Okay.
Vendors start covering over around 5, 6, 7 o'clock. Some stay open. You linger around. We give a wristband, a free program guide. There's a lot of freebie goodies on tables where people put out freebie stuff they're getting rid of. It's basically a bargain for their buck, and the website, which is easy because we have a complete schedule of events, which stars are coming. They can sign up for the email list, which we then send out 3 or 4 or 5 times a year that tells them who's coming to the convention. Is the name of the event, MidAtlanticNostalgiaConvention.com. And it's I believe it's a fun event. We get the word out pretty well. Facebook, everyone spreads the word. We get them to do it on every group. We pay for ads. We have it on MeTV. The commercials are on television. That has helped. We get flyers. We do about 200,000 flyers. Get printed and distributed.
Terrific.
Every comic book store in every Maryland and every bordering state practically gets 50 or 60 in a flyer in an envelope, and they can cut them out. We get them at every convention. So we hit about as far as we can get, because we've learned, even if they're on bulletin boards, you can put it at a post office, 300 people walk through the door every day, only one flyer ever gets taken, the other 2 are still up there. So if you got a 1 in 300 shot, the trick is how wide dispersed can we get with those flyers.
Right. Well, that's great, because I think people should know about it. In fact, one thing that hasn't been mentioned, the final night there's a banquet.
Yes, Saturday night for those coming for the weekend. There's a separate fee for that. It's the only thing that has a separate fee. The admission covers everything. The dinner is put on by the hotel. They have a chance to be able to sit at the table with a celebrity. There's no guarantees. We kind of work out what we can. But they can be in the room with the celebrity. So if they want to get their photo taken with the celebrity, there's another opportunity. We have stage entertainments, music, radio reenactment on stage, awards. It's a buffet, which everyone loves the buffet.
Oh, there you go.
It's always limited to the number of seating, and we rarely have tickets available at the door. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sometimes somebody at the last minute, he shows up at the show, says, I can't stay for Saturday night. Can I give the ticket in exchange for the money refund? And we do that because there's always people wanting dinner tickets during the weekend. It's optional for the banquet, but that seems to be a very popular way to close out 3 days, especially if you're not leaving home till Sunday morning. You might as well do something Saturday night.
And I remind you that they said people are staying like for the whole time or a couple nights. There are special room rates for the convention, right?
Correct. Locals, obviously, they can go back home.
Yes, of
If they're
course.
coming from out of state, the hotel has its special discount rate. It's much cheaper than most of the hotels in that area.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people like the convenience of staying there. I know some people, they get insomnia, and maybe they have it at home a lot, but 2 in the morning they can go down to the movie room and they're playing some rare Mexican horror film from 1930 some. And I had one guy say, I was up till 5 in the morning watching movies I had never knew existed. He goes, and I loved it. He says, but then I go back to my room. He says, my wife wakes me up at 8 in the morning, and he says, no, the next thing I want to see is at 12 noon, so let me sleep. But they had fun, and that's the best part. So the one thing that's amusing I have learned is everyone knows or has an idea of what the convention is, but the biggest compliment I get is year after year I hear from people, last year was my first year, I should have came the other years, I came one day, I'm coming all weekend, I didn't realize what all is there.
There you go.
And it's, no amount of description could reveal what they see with their own eyes.
Right.
I mean, there's pictures on the website on certain pages,
Right.
but it's one of those come once and I guarantee you'll come year after year after year.
Well, there you go. I mean, the interesting you say that you consider the table with the celebrity at the banquet. It's not like there's a big table like at a wedding and all the celebrities are up at this table and the peons are out here. They intermix,
Correct.
just like they do when the celebrities intermix with your vendors.
Correct. And and it's funny, sometimes the celebrities I've seen, when they go off to the bathroom real quick and they're walking back and they see something on the table and they go, I remember doing that TV movie. I haven't seen that in like 40 years. And the vendors are obliging. They'll be like, here, take it. You did it. You should have one.
There you go.
So they go home with goodies themselves.
Well, that's great. I mean, I was talking about that first story. Last year, a guy I talked to, because while I was waiting, that just a participant, not somebody who came by, a fan. And he said, he says, I ran into Kreskin the other day, and he asked me where the bathroom was. And he says, well, Kreskin, aren't you a psychic? Shouldn't you know where the bathroom is? And so we had fun with that. But so the one new element that we're going to add this year, I guess, to your convention, and hopefully for years to come, we will be there, and I'll be interviewing celebrities as well as we want to live stream the convention.
Yes.
And we'll work those details out after the show. It's not nothing to put on camera, but I want to thank you for coming all the way, because you come almost from the Pennsylvania border and you drove down here this evening to come see us.
It's my pleasure.
And we appreciate that. And I want everybody out there, September 14th, 15th, and 16th, come to the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention. You'll see some of your favorite celebrities. Vendors will have things that I know you're going to find something you want, and all these panels and great movies, and it's just going to be a great time. So until next time, this is Paul Stefan saying bye-bye.
You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.